Welcome to Inspiring Salon Professionals, the podcast that allows every therapist, nail tech and stylist to level up, build their career and reach for their dreams. Each week we'll be looking at a different area of the industry, and along the way I'll be chatting with salon owners, industry leaders and mentors who'll be sharing their stories on how they achieved their goals and made their successes. I'm Sue Davies, your host, award-winning salon owner and industry professional. Welcome to Inspiring Salon Professionals. Welcome to episode 8 of Inspiring Salon Professionals. This week I'm going to be talking with Liza Smith, who is a successful salon owner from down in Kent, and she's been in the industry for over 3 decades, which is a massive achievement. She has just won the Scratch Style Services to Industry Award, which was very much deserved, and joins the club with myself and several other great nail industry veterans. And I'm so pleased to have her with me today. The reason that I brought Lisa onto the show was to have a conversation around employers' view of apprentices. But knowing her history, we kind of changed it slightly so that it covers an employer's view of probably most types of employment status, as Lisa has experienced in all of them. So the conversation, I just kind of let it flow, because I know Lisa will talk as I will. And so hopefully the conversation is going to prove useful to many of you that are potentially looking at the pros and cons of employed versus self-employed and apprenticeships and all those other things in between too. So handing over to the interview now, and I'll let Lisa do her own introduction. See you on the other side. Liza Smith has now joined the meeting. So Lisa, can you just give us a little bit of a potted history, because your history is huge. If you just give us a bit of a potted history on who you are and what you've done and why you're joining me today.
Okay, well, hello. A career spanning 35 years, 3 years in college doing hair and beauty to level 3. Got the opportunity to open my salon immediately leaving college, took the opportunity. Never expected that to happen, but I did. Fast forward, my career followed 4 paths. So if we follow the salon path first, I've moved premises 5 times. My team grew and was employed, then self-employed, now back to employed, which I think we're going to touch on, so I won't elaborate. Along the way, I fell into competing and competed all over the world. Got national championships, trophies. At one point I was 5th in the world. That was all acrylics and liquid and powder extensions and everything.
That's when I first came across you.
That's it, on the competition arena. Yeah, with like Keaton and Denise and all that lot. And then, because you put yourself out there and you meet people, I then became an educator for CND and worked with Samantha and Samuel for the last 20 years. And I also then met Marion and Lorraine Griffin and people that were high in the session world, and I assisted those. And each of them, I'm a bit of a serial learner and a serial entrepreneur. So everything that I did to the absolute best I could, and reached a point that really there was no point in going any further. So I wanted to get my salon to a stage where I could retire from at some point. Yeah. So I then gradually retired from competing, retired from session work. I still educate, but not to the same level as practical, obviously with all moving on to online. And then last year in lockdown, I discovered coaching and fell in love with that. So my next project is Salon Coach. So that sort of brings me up to about now.
Yeah, it is. And I keep seeing your little, every time I see your new little logo, it's like, and it's just so impacting. I love that logo. It's brilliant.
Oh, I'm glad.
We'll start with some questions. And I'm sure we'll just carry on chatting, because we just talk a lot, don't we?
We do.
So you've had your salon for a very long time, and moved, and as well that moving of like 5 premises, that's a lot of moving. And as you because you just cut my hair for me a little while ago, so I did actually visited your salon for the first time. Yes. Which was really nice. So over those years, you would have had a lot of changes. And one of the things we're talking about at the moment on the podcast is about career pathways and all that kind of stuff. So you've had a really interesting journey through staffing your salon. So would you mind just talking about the different kind of staff models that you've had over the year? And I know now one of the things I wanted to bring you on for was to talk about apprenticeships, but you've had a lot of different staff models, and I think it'd be really useful for people to hear a salon owner's view of why you've chosen those things and the pros and cons of each of them, and why you've moved away from them and ended up where you are now.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, and there are numerous reasons why somebody will become a salon owner, and some of us fall into it sideways, and you get busy, so you think, I need someone else to help out, and you grow gradually. Some people go into it with their eyes open and decide that they want a team and they want premises and they're going to make it a solid business. Well, mine was organic growth, just being very busy, working 80 hours a week on my own, then a trainee, and then another employee, then somebody else from college. And so I took them on fully qualified initially from college, because that was the only option. There were no beauty apprenticeships whatsoever, no work experiences, no nothing. You just had to go to college. Yeah. So my team grew originally as employed, and we just gradually grew bigger and bigger. The reason for moving premises was usually because of a bad landlord, really bad legal problems with different people. I lost my first salon actually because somebody sold the building from under me, didn't even know it was happening. Wow. So the reasons for growing a team usually vary, and mine was organic. As I said, it grew slowly. And then you suddenly find yourself with a big premises with a team of, say, 4 or 5 employees. And at this point, then I started to look into having juniors as apprenticeships, because they were starting to come through. I met somebody that could offer me the training outside of college. Then because at the peak of my other things, so when I was competing a lot, traveling a lot, flying off everywhere at a moment's notice, I suddenly thought, the salon is almost a noose around my neck, and I got very close to selling the salon at this point. But I thought the in-between move would be to have less responsibility. So I spoke to the team, and they were all keen. They were all fully booked with clients, all very keen to be self-employed. And obviously, when you have employees, they are under your remit and you are on brand. But back in the day, I don't think we knew what brand was, to be fair. It was just we grew, and that's it. The more clients you got, the more team members you need, and that's what happened. So they were then paying me rent. I think at the time it was £100 a month, sorry. And no, it might have been less than, I think it's more £100 a week of my memory.
Really
yeah. I mean, I'm talking 20 years ago, but I think it was £100 a week.
Yeah.
And it did, because the last time I had self-employed, they were paying £600 a month. Yeah. So that was £150 a week. So then that played into my hands. And I have got a friend who has a salon, who has a brilliant hair salon, and has now chosen to go back to a self-employed model. It suits her. She's doing everything legally. Luckily, is a team that were employed with her, then went self-employed, which actually has its own remit problems, because unless you trust these people implicitly, they can take you to court and give you lots of problems about the relationship should be employed still. So without going into legal stuff, the reasons I then so obviously VAT has to be mentioned, because some salon owners grow quickly without realizing it, and they suddenly find themselves in a situation, which I did when if I was going to continue to have employees, I was going to have a huge VAT bill. And after discussing it with my accountant and other people, that was another reason why the girls went self-employed. The main reason was because I was very busy, and I didn't feel I could mentor them and employ them as I should do. So there are times, and there have been times in my career, where it suited me to not have the responsibility as an employer. But then you come into the situation as we now know, and this is where a lot of people are falling foul, is people want a brand. We now know in the last 10 years, we've all realized. So let me do a slight sideways chat that is really relevant to this. And that is, my last column in Scratch was all about the fact that hairdressing has moved on in price and nails haven't.
I think we wrote very similar things actually. That
Yes,
was really weird.
Isn't it weird how these conversations happen between us, and it triggers these thought processes? And so for me, because obviously I'm a hairdresser and a beauty therapist and a nail professional, so I keep my finger on the pulse for the nail. I know what hairdressing is charged. I know that like 30 years ago, we were charging £40 for a set of nails and £40 for cut and colour. Yeah. You know, fast forward an average cut and colour, and I'm talking average, you know, not your high quality stylist. Your average cut and colour is now £80, whereas your new set of nails is still 40, and in some cases a lot less. Yeah. So now, obviously, in my salon, it's different. We're VAT registered. We're all employed. We use high-end products. We're looking for a different type of clients. So our new sets are 60, but on average, you're looking at around the same price, which is 40 quid. Yeah. So what happens? I look back at 30 years ago. There were still hair salons that we called Sweaty Betties. Yeah. And they were the ones that used all the gallon size shampoos and put them into nice bottles. They used instant coffee. They had last year's magazines on the side. But it was cheap and cheerful. And there wasn't a lot of in-salon training, no in-salon training. There was no brand. The site, you're lucky if you had a logo. No one had websites, or there was no social media. So no one had a brand.
Lisa's nails.
Lisa's
exactly. But that was it, wasn't it?
It was. So no one knew. So what then happened in the hair industry? That's why I needed to say this side story. The hair industry sat up and took notice quickly. You had the Tony and Guys and all the big, the big conglomerates that then became franchise. And suddenly what was only ever found in London was found in your high street. Yeah. Not like big towns. I'm talking, because I'm in Kent, obviously, Kent. It's like you're looking Maidstone, Canterbury, Rochester, maybe not my high street, but you would get the big Tony and Guys, and everybody would suddenly be looking for something a little bit more. They were all employed. They had to be employed because everyone had to be on brand. Yeah. Everyone cut the same or within reason. Yeah, there was protocol, there were systems. So you've got this sort of element of you had to have employees in those salons. Now, because the little Sweaty Betties, they the shampoo and sets died off, literally, bless their hearts. And those salons, they stopped being that way. So now nearly every salon on their high street has got a brand. They've got a recognizable brand. They've got a high level of skill. They've got in-salon training. Now follow back 30 years for the nail industry. The nail industry then was this handful of people that were highly skilled, people like, myself and people that genuinely learned their skill and trade and then taught others. But the industry didn't move forward at the same rate because they're younger. Hairdressing industry was around in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. It wasn't until the 80s that things changed for the hairdressing industry and everybody stepped up a level. Well, the nail industry is only just doing that now. The biggest problem with having a self-employed team, now I've spoke about brand, is the salon owners that don't want to get into the VAT situation. They don't want to charge prices that they feel are inflated. They don't want to have to do things that employers do. Now, the biggest problem is, but they do want a brand. They do want the salon to be high level. They do want everyone to use the same products. They do want everybody maybe even to look the same. But this is where we cross over into issues. So if you are genuinely switched on, as my friend Tina is, and I've plumped this into her. I've told her all the areas where she has to be careful. But having a self-employed team means, and for me, when we got to the premises I'm in now that you've been to, so 16 years ago, my team was still self-employed and I was still heavily traveling, so it was playing in my hands. What I discovered though is they would get very fully booked, and because they get into their 20s, they then start thinking about having children and getting married and whatever. And then before you know it, they've got a full book, thank you very much. And then they're going to leave and take all those clients with them, because they can, because they're self-employed.
Absolutely.
So you just keep building and then shrinking and building and then shrinking. So when I realized I wanted to make this more about me and more about my retirement and make the business more of a business, I then realized I had to move to employed, and I couldn't do it overnight. We couldn't suddenly put 20% on their prices. We had to take a 3-year period, and that's the 3-year plan. The master plan took 3 years, and the way I did that was by taking on apprentices immediately. I took on 2, and then gradually the self-employed people just left, but not before I'd sort of replaced them. So it had to happen mutually. Get to the stage where you start changing things and saying to the self-employed staff, I'm really sorry, but this is the way it's going to be from now on. I understand if that's not for you. And at the end of next year, we're only going to have employed staff. So, think about it. And only 2 people, one of which was my daughter, stayed with us as employees. They jumped at it. They both wanted to be employed. And you'll always find people that that recognize that having all that money in your hand is not your income.
No. And I think this is a massive issue, isn't it? I mean, I know with my salon, I've had a mix over the years of different things and different models, and had all, at some points I've had employed apprentices and self-employed all at the same time. And it's a challenge, massive challenge, to try and make it work. But I've also tried to get the people that I had self-employed at different points to go employed, and just absolute refusal, because they view themselves completely as a business. And although that from where I was standing, it was questionable, and I had to make sure that I complied so solidly with the law, trying to make sure that I was on the right side of it. But it did make it difficult, because you do want that brand, and that branding is what brings people to the salon and brings them to your business. And when you can't have that control over your business, it does make it quite challenging.
It was an absolute it was a clear line in the sand for me. I recognized that, and I also recognized it was going to take a few years to transition. And I do think, as you no doubt discovered, that having a mix of employed and self-employed only works if the people that are there very well, and it just works for them as independent people. I think my biggest bugbear at the moment is, and this is why I went into business coaching and why I feel I really have this desire to elevate people's knowledge, is the fact that when people slide in slowly sideways into our industry, from hobby to professional, which is what usually happens with the nail industry, maybe not so much hair and beauty.
I started, to be honest.
It's probably 80%. 80% of the industry has started like that, and are solopreneurs. They're on their own, and what they don't correlate is the fact that my employees have a set amount in their pocket each month, but all their taxes paid, as we all found out when they were all furloughed, and thank you very much, they could sit at home with 80% of their wage. No one knew that was coming. That was just a bonus for any employee out there, and a real shocker for someone that's self-employed.
COVID has highlighted a lot of employment irregularities.
It has, and choices. It's highlighted the choices that we make. So my girls have had their pension paid, they have their national insurance paid, they have paid holiday, paid sick. And if you add that up over 12 months, because I started doing it, I haven't quite managed to finish that equation, but I will come up with a figure, and also they don't have to worry about the stock. It's just there. They don't have to waste time doing anything outside of their 40 hours. So people think they earn double when they're self-employed. But by the time you chip away at it and work out the hours, say you would do 60 hours a week, because 20 hours a week, you're ordering, researching, invoicing, doing social media, checking the bank, doing a stock check, whatever it is, if that you have to do that outside of your income earning hours, then that is included in the hours that you're working. That brings everything down. So I do think we need to have a highly educated situation where people genuinely look at what they're charging, because if someone is charging £15 for an hour's treatment, then they are
ideas. So many of them have no idea that they're actually probably only going to get about £5 or £6 of that.
Exactly.
In real terms,
unless they are taking cash and not declaring any money. But as they found out, that will eventually come a cropper. You're living on a knife edge. If you are living cash only, you're living on a knife edge for somebody somewhere to say something. And if the tax, I mean, I've had 3 tax inspections, 2 VAT, one income tax over the years. That's only one every decade, so I can cope with that.
No, touch wood, I've not had them on my business, but we've had, I think, 3 or 4 on my husband's business over the years. And at the end of the day,
they look at your lifestyle.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk to business people outside of industry. I reckon more than half my time networking and learning is not from industry, it's from outside industry. Yeah. And somebody once did say to me, just before lockdown, so before we even got the furlough situation and self-employed people suddenly having a shocker, not all self-employed people, but a good handful, someone said to me from outside of business, I think they were in accounts, and they said something along the lines of, it's a known thing that there is lots of people in your industry that pay 0 tax but drive Range Rovers and have £2,000 handbags. And that was coming from someone outside of industry. That wasn't someone pointing the finger within. Yeah. So, and it's a known thing that there is an element to the industry that deals in cash only. That I mean, it's not only our industry, the building industry, any trade.
I know, it's it. I mean, my husband's in the construction industry, and their cash rampages through that industry. But the government have. We could get into like a whole different thing there, but the government, we've even just had, like, now for his business, and I do wonder, I don't think it would work in hair and beauty, but we've got a thing now called the domestic reverse charge, so that we can't, when we're invoicing our contractors, we can't charge VAT anymore. And
how does that work?
I know, so they have to charge it. It's really weird. So we can't charge it. We have to tell them that we're under the reverse charge scheme, and then they can then they can charge their client. It's just the most complicated thing, and it's all to do with subcontracting, which is effectively what our self-employed model is in the industry, is subcontractors. Yeah. But within construction, because the industry is so huge, there's this massive problem of people evading VAT or claiming extra VAT and claiming back what they shouldn't. Honestly, it's a whole minefield of nightmare domestic reverse charge, and I don't understand it. Thank goodness my accounting system does it for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, there's only so much
we need to be aware
need to know, isn't there?
Yeah, this is it. I've got a machine that does it for me, and a brain in that machine that does it, and that's all I need to worry about. And I just have to remember to type on every invoice. Yes. And even that can be complex sometimes, but it's a massive problem. And the revenue, they are watching, and especially now after COVID, they've got to claw back money from wherever they can. And and we have all got to be very aware that if we are using a self-employed model, that we are working within the legal realms of it. Definitely.
And to be fair, it's forever changing, and I think you just have to have a really good chat with yourself as to why they are self-employed, and come to the conclusion as to why you have chosen that model, and then work your business model around that. If you genuinely don't want the responsibility, or you don't want to pay VAT, all of these are valid. Nobody wants to pay VAT if they can help it, but there will come a time where you've got to make a decision whether you shrink your business or grow your business. And it depends on what age you are, where you're at with your children. All of these things need to be, everyone's independent and individual as to what they need, aren't they? Absolutely. And how they get their money. But genuinely, it is a big consideration which way you jump and which way you choose. But I would say it's a very hard thing to have a mixture of both.
Yeah, it is. And I think, like, with my situation, member of my team that was working with me from the beginning, we set up, and it was, and I wanted to do that back in 2011, and it was a much easier option. Those were like back then. Now things have moved on slightly. But I always wanted to have a level of control, but she was a family member. We've obviously known each other forever, and it worked for us. But and having those employed people around, you know, everybody worked together, and we blended as a team. However, it makes things very grey. And,
you've just touched on the other issue that a lot of us do fall into, and I have done many times, is employing people because you know them rather than their skill set. And again, it's this whole mindset that we do slide into business. Most of us, myself included, didn't start in business as a business person.
No, absolutely not. No.
I actually, luckily for me, did do City and Guilds business management or salon management at college. So I wasn't completely clueless. I was able to understand double entry bookkeeping and cash flow forecasts and stuff right from day one. But there's no backup for actually running a place. No, ideally you would work somewhere, manage somewhere, then maybe think about owning somewhere.
This is it. I mean, it's like with me. I mean, I'd worked for years as an office manager and PA and all that kind of stuff, and I very handily worked in finance for quite a long time, so I had an overview of financial stuff. And then back 25 years ago, my husband set up his business. So I've been running, and I'd gone through double entry bookkeeping training. So I'd had that background too. And by the time I started the salon, I'd been running his business, doing all of his books, doing his VAT and all that kind of stuff. So I had an awareness that came with me that I still carry. Like, I mean, I still do all of his books and stuff now. Hate it, but still do it because it just have to. No one else is going to do it. And so so it does and I think having that level of understanding, not every salon owner, like you say, has that level of understanding, and that sometimes it can maybe sway the decisions you make with how you man your salon and how you manage your salon. Definitely.
I think the other thing is, an awful lot of people that don't have business knowledge, especially on the financials, is that they maybe they hire an accountant when they really only need a bookkeeper.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know there's some really great software like Xero and QuickBooks and all that lot now, which obviously helps, but you've got to understand what you're inputting and what you're outputting to be able to really get the most of that. So I do think people are overpaying for knowledge. You only really need an accountant to show you how to make the best of your tax.
Yeah, really. And I think accountants are making a lot of money out of our industry, personally.
I think they are.
Anyway, should we move on to another question?
Yes.
Because I knew we'd just sit chatting, and I hope it's the thing is, I think we're quite like-minded, aren't we, in how we view things. And so we'll just sit chatting for ages. Apprentices, pros and cons of apprentices.
I think there's not many cons. There really isn't many cons. And the reason being, and this is what I often say to people, is some 16-year-olds genuinely are not ready for work. We all know that. However, if they've had work experience with you or whatever, then taking somebody on at that age allows you, and I know this sounds cavalier, but you are taking someone on at a very low pay rate. And if you can get them, like, obviously for me as an educator, I could get them to do like a schlap beginners, or then like a waxing beginners, so I could actually get them to turn in money within sort of 6 months. And they do have a role within the business. So because I have a big business with a big team with over 3 floors, I need receptionists and I need juniors. The girls couldn't work this place on their own. So there'll always be the need for that person that's on the bottom rung. So that's the first advantage. It allows you to have that. You don't have the fear that you're going to train someone for 4 years and they're going to leave. Because if you've got a hierarchy starting from the 16, 17-year-olds that you're chucking a lot of education at, but they're also keeping the salon running by doing the things that mean that the more expensive members of staff that are being paid a good wage don't have to do all the little stuff. So they're all the pros for apprenticeships. The only thing that can go slightly wrong is you've got to get a good trainee provider. And it does vary around the country. And it's change. It changes all the time. And currently, at the moment, I've taken on 2 hairdressing apprentices because I want to grow my hairdressing side of the business. And it's so changed. Literally, we deliver all the education right now. And the advantage of that is that they learn how we want to learn. But there is still this conflict of when they're assessed by an outside assessor, they have to do A, B, C, D, even though that's not the way we do things. So there's the training itself, and the training provider can give you issues. And if you are fully booked as a salon owner and you've got 3 other people in your business that are fully booked, and no one's got time to train or assess the apprentice, then you've got issues. And maybe you need to consider taking a step off the salon floor for half a day a week to start with before you think about taking on an apprentice. Because they can't just be used to clean.
I went through SACS and it was down to me to do the training, and it wasn't. So I specifically set time aside so that I could do that. And it is, and I was in a position I could do that. But for some salon owners, that isn't always an option, is it?
No. But there are, like I said, there are other ways to get people in that will help support the running of the salon. And also you can hand pick somebody that you really like the look of, and that is approaching colleges and saying we're happy to take on work experience girls from college, or boys, but basically they have to do, a lot of colleges have to do 300 hours over their year 1 and their year 2. And a lot of my team that I've now got as fully employed started that way. They come with us for their 2 days a week or whatever for their school term, their year 1. And then because we liked them, we'd say, would you like to complete your level 3 with us as an apprentice? Because they're still young enough. Because
apprenticeships have changed quite a lot, haven't they, in recent years? Obviously, at the moment, there's an extra £1,000 funding from the government, I believe. And so an apprenticeship has opened up to the over 24s. So is it something, I mean, because I know for me, I've always tried to work with whatever age group came to me, but do you specifically look for youth, or are you as an employer more open to mature candidates as well? It's going to be a massive thing, isn't it, that us oldies can become, I keep thinking I'm going to go and be an apprentice somewhere.
There's two sides to my answer. Initially, from a business perspective, for building a business and growing a team, I would start them as young as possible, purely because of the pay rate. And they grow with you. They genuinely grow with you. For those 2 reasons, I would, not all of them, but a biggest percentage of your intake really should be 16-year-olds. Really should be 16-year-olds. Because you have 2 years of paying them a low pay rate. And the way I justify that is I went to college for 3 years and didn't get paid a penny. I had to go and work in the bar and waitressing 4 nights a week to earn my money. So I have no guilt over being cavalier like that. This is how you build a business. This is how you build a team. And you are giving them their career. So they're more than happy. And if you do your job correctly and they're great, then they start earning commission anyway. So they're not on a low pay rate for a long time. The advantage that if I was to take on a mature student as an apprentice, and there is extra help at the moment, but they would have to be superstars, because they will be on £8-9 an hour. And that's a tough call for someone who's not qualified. That's unskilled labor.
Absolutely. And I do wonder, because obviously, like now, I haven't been in a position to be employing an apprentice for a while, obviously due to COVID, and then I've now got rid of my business. That whole opportunity now to have like the much more mature apprentice is, I don't know, I'm just quite interested to see where it goes and how it turns out.
I would like to think that the government will give, realistically, I don't think it should stop at 19, the support. I think it should be up to the age of 30, maybe even, because if they want to get people that have slipped through the net and that are floundering and are not really finding their passion in life, then allow them to jump into an apprenticeship, but support the employer by giving them the same support for whatever age they are. Except that they've got to be on a lower wage for starters.
I mean, like the risk, I restarted my career in my 30s, and left all of my office management jobs and stuff that I'd done previously because I had the kids and I had an opportunity. I'd always wanted to get into this industry. And so I seized the opportunity and never let go. And I was just really lucky that someone, when I happened to walk into one particular person's salon one day and they happened to be recruiting, and it was one of those like real sort of like sliding door moments that I actually got my leg up into the industry. But it is, you know, it's tough as a more mature person. And I know, you know, we sit across the forums a lot, don't we? You know, that I'm however old and no one will take me seriously, and, you know, no one wants to employ me, and it is difficult. But as I think
also the thing that mature students and mature employees could also take advantage of is the fact that there's a reasonably priced education. You know, so you could actually get a couple of skills under your belt and then ask to be an employee.
Yeah.
You know, even if there is an apprenticeship startup situation for that age group, then as long as you could quite quickly, especially, you know, if you know where you're working and you find somewhere you want to work because you think that they're going to be a good employer, then usually that good employer will have good ways of educating, whether it's in-house or out-house or with a brand that they're using. So I do think that there's nothing stopping anybody getting in on that level.
And I think we're quite an open industry to age nowadays, and I think that there's an awful lot of us that come to this career as more mature people, and we, you know, there is a huge amount of 16, 18-year-olds that are coming into industry, but I think, you know, we know, especially in the nail industry, it's a very easy step to get into our industry, probably less so with beauty and hair, but it's going to be an interesting journey, I think, over the next few years to see where like the whole pandemic has changed the platform that we all operate on, hasn't it? Everything's changed.
So. and some good and some not, you know. It will. I've always felt in the last 5 years that the industry needed to shrink a little bit. You know, we were oversubscribed as an industry. There was a lot of people that were semi hobbyists that were doing a good enough job, but possibly weren't
stay there.
They weren't insured, they weren't progressing the industry. And we don't all have to be holier than thou. It's not all about the industry. It is about us as individuals and earning a decent wage for ourselves and everybody else. But yeah, there has to be a line that you draw that means that something big has to happen to shrink an industry to where it should be. And the end of that conversation that we started about hair versus nails pricing wise, this is when I've ended up advising over the last few months that some people just need to drop things like enhancements, because that, you know, it is a little bit like not every hairdresser is capable of doing an extremely good color root melt and balayage, you know. It really does separate the men from the boys. A lot of good hairdressers out there can do great color, great hair cutting, styling, but there are color specialists out there that can color correct, and they are minimal. And that's really where the nail industry should be heading. It should be heading that there's great skill across the board, but specialism in people that can afford to do a good job but very quickly and charge more.
Absolutely. Value your worth.
Yes.
The key to our industry.
Yes.
Anyway, we'll leave the main questions. I've got, I'm doing like some little quick fire questions at the end of interviews, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
So quick answers, because otherwise you've got to be somewhere anyway. We've got a few minutes. Yes. So there's just a few questions. Instant reactions. What makes you get out of bed in the morning? What has been the happiest moment of your career to date?
Winning services to the industry.
I knew you were going to say that. That was mine.
But it comes very close to watching my daughter achieve what she did as well.
She's been,
you know, she decided to take a step out, but that they come close.
What's the best piece of advice you've had, and did you listen at the time or learn the hard way?
I've always learned the hard way. I'm stubborn. I'm obstinate. I'm very, 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 very along the lines that I have to learn my own lessons. And probably the best advice, as I reckon, that question, if you ask someone every decade, I reckon their last best advice has happened in the last 10 years, like repeatedly. And genuinely, probably the best advice I've been given has literally been in the last 2 years. And it's not necessarily been from one person, it's been across the board.
Yeah.
And that is about how to pivot and how to view things differently.
Brilliant. If you could change one thing in your career, what would you change?
There's not a lot. I've only got one regret that if I could change, I would. Everything else was all lessons learned and fabulous. And that is I allowed my pride to make a financial decision about 20 years ago, no, about 18 years ago. And I'm still physically, financially paying for that decision, because if I'd have just let it go and not got it, my pride not got in the way, I'd have just lost a little bit and not had to pay for like 30 years.
Wow.
So that's the only thing. And because I've been asked that question before and I had to dig deep to find it, but it's the one time I let my pride get in the way of making a sensible decision, and it cost me a lot of money.
Yeah, pride can be a terrible
and it's not something I suffer with, and that's what annoys me. It's the one time I let it get
in. Oh dear. So what person, place or experience has inspired you the most professionally?
In my early days, I looked up to people like Jan Arnold from CND and the international CND team that was a lot more prevalent than it is now. The team has shifted to be more inclusive and more friendly, I suppose, but they used to be these people that like dressed in black and white, and it was like a childish attitude of like, that's who I want to be. And to be fair, to this day, I think someone like Jan Arnold has probably had the biggest impact on me, but obviously people like Marion and my friend Lorraine and many, many, many people in the industry that have led the way, they are probably my favorite mentors.
Brilliant. And what is the best treatment you've ever had?
Oh, I actually don't have that many treatments. Shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Couples massage.
Yeah.
I treated my husband. I got to Christmas Eve one day and realised, shit, I haven't bought him a Christmas present. So I went online, thought, right, he likes Brighton. I went online and found a massage salon in Brighton that did couples massage, that I could buy a voucher online, print it off, done. Excellent. And booked it. And then I went online and booked a hotel. So in an hour, I'd got him this like couples massage. And we both went, it was like the week after New Year. And it actually inspired me that much that we made our spa room that we've got now that has got space to do a couples massage. So that was, I don't have a lot of treatments. I'm not successful. I go to places and go, I'm going to book in for massage, and find out they're fully booked. So for me, I'm very tactile, and I love having my feet rubbed, having a massage, having my scalp. I love my blow dries are my favorite thing. I pay someone to blow dry my hair every week.
Yeah, brilliant. And lastly, and I think I know the answer to this, would you do it all again?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, why not? Why would you not? Genuinely feel blessed that I started very young. I do sometimes look at the industry now and think, oh God, what I wouldn't have given to have had like Facebook and Instagram day one. But I genuinely think we were blessed with the education that we was able to receive. My 3 years education at college, second to none.
And it's so different to what
I might as well have been at university nowadays. 5 days a week for 3 years.
Yeah, I know, because I so wanted to do that, and I got kind of swayed by my now husband. Well, no, he didn't sway me, but life swayed me, because I was like, oh, I've got a boyfriend. And my mum was like, go and learn to type, because you'll always have a job. And weirdly, if I did still type, I probably would be finding life more challenging nowadays trying to be a PA, because there's just not as many roles around.
No. And, well, it's all virtual. It's all virtual. You'd have to be a VA now, wouldn't you?
Yeah, this is it. It's such a different world as someone that types.
And just lastly, that thing about I said that all industries have to shrink at some point. Well, that because they do. Anyone who uses their hands and provides a service will be the last people to be replaced.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is like with my husband, he's like in construction, plumbing mainly, and it is. And there's always going to be someone that needs their leaky toilet fixed. Always.
Yeah.
Especially a leaky toilet.
Well, probably in 50 years there'll be robots doing it.
Maybe. Maybe we won't even go to the toilet in 50 years. Anyway, we'll leave that there.
Yeah, no toilet jokes. No toilet jokes.
No. And we'll finish the recording. And thank you so much, Lisa, for joining me.
Absolute pleasure. Always.
Pleasure. So there you have it. A great interview there with Lisa, and some really key facts to take away from that. She's had 35 years in the industry, and just that lesson of like losing her first salon, being sold out from underneath her. There are so many things that you have to keep an eye on as a salon owner, and who owns your lease and how that building is owned and operated is something is a massive factor. And I'll be covering that in a future episode with someone that's a lease specialist and can help with that kind of thing. One of the things that was quite important that Lisa was talking about was that difference between how things were 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and how things are now. And it is funny because we both actually did write a very, very similar article in Scratch last month. And probably because we've both been having this conversation when she was cutting my hair when I was at her salon. It kind of covers the stuff we were talking around pricing and how branding has changed. Brand is now a huge part of business management. And back then it was, you had loads of sort of Sue's nails or Lisa's hair or whatever it may be that were just, it just was whoever the person was. And marketing was done in a very, very different way. And now everybody's a marketeer. Everybody has to be on brand, and things have changed massively. And that step from, going to your local Lisa's hair in the high street to having Tony and Guy in the high street was a massive move for the hair industry. And we have had elements of it within the nail industry with things like Nails Inc. But on the whole, it seems to have stuck fairly much with hair. And even beauty hasn't really had those huge brands that have managed to franchise across the whole of the UK. And with those brands comes a very, very different employment model and management model. And I think it was really interesting how Lisa was talking about how now we have to be on brand, and how having a self-employed team can sometimes detract from that brand. And yet the clients most often don't realise what kind of employment setup you have within your business, but it does have a key factor in the success of your business and in how you manage it, how you recruit, and how you retain. Lisa's new venture, Business of Salons, and some of the stuff that I'm working on too, this is where I was saying we're kind of going on very similar tangents at the moment, the pair of us. But it is much more about recognising business skills. This is a key factor in our industry now. And whether you're a solo therapist working from home, whether you are somebody that's got a team of 15 staff and 10 treatment rooms, you need to be able to market your brand and understand how your business operates on a day-to-day basis. Going forward, that's something that I know both Lisa and myself are going to be concentrating on. Finally, one of the things that struck me there was a few comments from Lisa there about work experience, and it's something I'm going to cover in the next episode because it is a really, really important part of our industry and is something that as a salon owner or a business owner, you are regularly asked if so-and-so's son, daughter, child, cousin, niece, whoever it may be, can do work experience in your business. And it's a really valuable tool for salon owners to impress upon the potential future therapists and stylists within our industry. It's an opportunity to impress upon them what the job actually means. And hopefully we can sort the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, by using this amazing tool that gives them an insight into our world and gives us the opportunity to maybe get that perfect recruit for further down the line. But we'll cover that in next week's episode, and look forward to speaking to you then. Thank you for listening to Inspiring Salon Professionals. And if you've enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review and share with other industry professionals you think may enjoy the show too. For links and further information, you'll find those in the show notes or on my website www.suedavies.org. You can also hear more from me and join the Inspiring Salon Professionals community on the Facebook group. Thanks again and see you next time. Bye for now.